Hello everyone, a little bit of a very relaxed video this morning. Poor quality lighting setup, but it's kind of done on purpose because I want to get a message across. Stop thinking about how everything has to be perfect, and I really want to emphasize, get over the financial media headlines. This is the most heavily industry funded media industry that has ever existed in the history of the planet. I mean, basically, banks, brokers, fund managers fund the financial media fully now. It used to be that the financial media had wide-ranging advertising revenue, but now it's very concentrated in the people that they report on. So what I'm saying is not a conspiracy theory, but it just works out that the US stock market is crashing. It's already well into a major collapse, and it is hardly being reported on. In fact, you can hear a pin drop on Wall Street. The Wall Street groupthink is not difficult to outsmart. It's not that difficult to outsmart. And what's interesting about every market crash throughout history is that every time in real time, everyone thinks this time will be different because things are different. So the world's never had social media before, the world's never had AI before, so this one will be different. It's the same thing every time. I mean, people once bought tulip bulbs which are perishable up to the value of in a frenzy because it was going up, so it would keep going up. People react to recency, frequency, intensity every time, and they miss the big picture every time, and they miss the real fundamentals every time. And this is one of those occasions. So I'm tired of trying to fit in. That's why I'm dressed like this morning, and I don't care too much about the lighting. I've made a bit of an effort. But hello, everyone, wake up. Wall Street groupthink gets it wrong all the time. Goldman Sachs gets it wrong all the time. But everyone has this massive herd instinct. It's the most powerful instinct in the human mind, body, soul, to fit in with the herd. And, greed and the fear of missing out. And all of these things combine to not being able, for most people, 98% of the market, not being able to recognize the obvious. Stocks are overvalued. People say it, but they don't act on it. The market had become totally narrow and concentrated. The participation across the US community had never been as extreme as it is now, has never been as extreme as it is now. It's going to get a lot smaller, though, because a lot of people are going to lose money. Now, I'm trying to rescue people. I'm trying to save them from this madness, but no one wants to really publish that someone thinks there's going to be a crash. So I'm not the only one saying it. There's some very senior fund managers in the world who are well regarded, like me, who are saying the exact same things, but we're not getting the amount of press. And you'll also notice in the media now, mainstream financial media now, and some people are really good, like AusBiz, for instance. They've got a bullish bias, but it's not as severe as others. And they let on people like me who say the market could be going down. So they really want to help their viewers. But a whole lot of the big shop media organizations around the world in financial markets are just about pleasing largely their fund management advertisers. So of course they want to say good things about the market. I've never seen it like this. It didn't used to be like this. You need to be aware, if you're new to markets, it didn't used to be like this. Every day there would be bullish and bearish arguments in the financial media, but we've moved into this phase of the media interviews, journalists interview journalists, which is a complete nonsense. But it means they control the narrative by doing that. That's why that process has evolved over the last 8 or so, 10 years. Before that, journalists interviewed people who were doing things in their area of expertise, but now journalists interview journalists about different areas, and that's total control of the narrative, maintaining a bullish bias to keep everyone excited about putting all their money into stocks and funds management firms, and those firms getting rich, paying the financial media more in advertising. It all works beautiful roundabout. But I'm trying to tell you today that we're already in a crash, and it's not really being reported the way it should be. All right, so I've been selling NVIDIA for weeks. Tesla, Apple, even. Apple hasn't been as rewarding, although it has come down a lot. US indices. Look, it's not hard to beat Wall Street. They're not the smartest people in the world. They're the best mathematicians. See, once upon a time, Wall Street was made up of people who were hired off the street, had street smarts, and a little bit of aggression and a little bit of attitude and a little bit of let's get serious, do the right thing, but trade really hard. Now Wall Street hires the top mathematical minds so they can all think the same way. And come up with models like they did for the GFC that have no real world basis, but looked great in a mathematical Excel spreadsheet. So, if you put 20,000 risky assets together, they're no longer risky. That's all that was all about. And it was nonsense. And anyone could see that that was nonsense, but, they had a mathematical proof, right? It's a bit like the options pricing business of, Black and Scholes. Won the Nobel Prize, but then lost $3 billion in a fund when they started to use the formula that they won the Nobel Prize for in actual markets. They got completely wiped out. So be aware that financial markets cannot, they do for extended periods of time, disassociate from the real world, but eventually they're always brought back to ground. And unfortunately, they've come a long way from ground on this run. They've outperformed SpaceX in terms of how far they can get from the ground. So there's a lot of downside in markets, particularly as who do you know who is not long? Who do you know who's not talking about their stock portfolio and how well it was doing in the US, but not in Australia? In Australia, everyone's like, oh yeah, my stocks are doing really well. They've gone up 2.8% a year for the last 3 years. That's less than inflation. So you could have got more money in the bank, basically. So the Australian market is vulnerable because the US market's going to correct and we tend to follow it. The Australian market is vulnerable because it's reacted more positively to US hopes of interest rates by the Fed than the US market has. So that's how overpriced the Australian market is. The Australian market is vulnerable because any rising geopolitical tensions between the US and China are a big negative for Australia. I mean, where in the history of humanity and civilization has a small country that depends for 2/3 of its wealth almost on its biggest trading partner decided to be militarily aggressive towards that trading partner? I don't see a happy ending to that economically for Australia. But the US market it just looks terrible across the board. And if this was happening 15 years ago, there'd be so much financial media about how worried people should be. And there's only the odd story here and there. And still the stories about, hey, it's great value, be buying. Check out my website, cliffordbennett.com.au, where I really try to help people save their shirts and rescue traders for free with the commentary. And I provide market direction signals that can be very helpful as well. Thanks very much. Have a great day. I've enjoyed rambling to you because it's both amusing, a tragedy, and an opportunity, this current market environment. And you can make just as much money being short stocks as you can being long stocks. And they won't go down forever, and they'll go up for periods of time in this bear market. But I think it is a bear market now. Thanks very much. Have a good day. Cheers.